Raghav today, huh?
They have a children's Rath Yatra today.
Oh.
So he's coordinating that. So
Oh. There's one in Chicago too.
okay.
Today.
Today?
Today. I don't know if it's a children's one. Maybe it is. Do you play Mridanga? Not yet? How are they doing it? How are they doing it in this pandemic thing?
I don't know the details.
You don't know.
But they're just keeping distance and trying to do it not the usual way. We'll have to see.
But I'm asking, how are they doing it logistically because of pandemic? Could this go off? Off, off. A little intense. You play cartels? Not yet. Not yet. Jaya. You know the words to Jai Radha Madhava? Yes or no? Should we get the words for you and you can read them? Do you know or not? What was that? He doesn't know. Doesn't want to. Okay. How about you? Doesn't know. So find on your phone. These are names of Krishna in Vrindavan. Radha Madhava, Kunja Bihari, Yasoda Nandana, Giri Varadhari, Gopi Jana Ballabha, just names of Krishna in Vrindavan. That's all. He says he doesn't know and he doesn't want to know. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Ballabha Giri Varadhari Gopi Jana Ballabha Giri Varadhari Gopi Jana Ballabha Giri Varadhari Jasodanandana Brajachanurandana Jasodanandana Brajachanurandana Jamunatira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Gopijana Vallabha Girivara Dhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivara Dhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivara Dhari Jasodanandana Brajajanarandana Jasodanandana Brajajanarandana Jamana Tiravana Chadi Jamana Tiravana Chadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hadi Madhava Kunjabi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hadi Madhava Kunjabi Hadi Jaya Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivedikacharya Astatarasatasi Srimadas Divine Grace Shri Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Gora Premanandi Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
What's the price for entering into Vrindavan? You have to have a ticket, but a ticket doesn't get you into Vrindavan. Prabhupada said that on many occasions. You can't simply buy a ticket to go to Vrindavan. So if you can't just buy a ticket to go to Vrindavan, how do you get to Vrindavan? What's the price? Huh? Sincere devotion. So how do we get sincere devotion? How do we get that commodity or that capacity to enter Vrindavan? Yeah, mercy. And making some effort by the primary effort, the effort of devotional service begins with hearing. So let's do some hearing, because through sound we can enter Vrindavan. That's where we're going. We're going to attempt. We're in the very beginning portion, chapter 12, text number 2. It comes after chapter 11. And chapter 11 is Krishna's childhood pastimes. Just a quick 2-minute summary, 2 or 3 minute summary of 11. 11 begins the residents, Nanda Maharaj and Mother Jasoda and their cowherd community. They have been living in Gokula. They've had some problems. Putana came, Chakatasura came, Trinavarta came. The twin Arjuna trees fell over in Nanda's courtyard, and So they had to get together, the elders, and said, too many dangers here, we should move. And so there are different reasons, and they all decided to leave and just go on the other side of the river Jamuna to the Vrindavan forest, because Mahavan is on the eastern side where they were, and Vrindavan is on the western side of the river Jamuna, along with 10 other forests. So they moved, they settled, just like the song we just sang, Jamuna Tira means the banks of the river Jamuna. And Krishna and Balaram particularly were happy because they were by the side of the river Jamuna. They were near Govardhan Hill, and they were in their beloved forest of Vrindavan, because in their beloved forest of Vrindavan they have eternal associates who were really eager for their association. So they were really enlivened, and they did little boy things because they were just 3 years, 4 months of age, according to our acharyas, when they moved. And so their childhood activities, going with Nanda with the cows, really being into the cows, wanting to take care of the cows, and it was decided they could take care of the calves. And so they started taking care of the calves. And there's playful activities, details of what they would do together. And then Vatsasura, the calf demon, the slaying of the calf demon. And then Bakasura. So Bakasura, turns out, was the elder of 2 brothers, and both of the 2 brothers were brothers of Putana. They were family demons. So Bakasura was taken on by Krishna, and then the cowherd boys went back at the end of the day. They told the residents of the village what happened, and they were amazed at how the Supreme Personality of Godhead protected Krishna and Balaram, and so forth. So the parental affection, Vatsalya Rasa, ends in that end of chapter 11. And chapter 12 begins, it's a new pastime, and the first verse, Krishna had decided the previous day that he wanted to break the routine. Normally they would have breakfast and then go out and take care of the cows. So he told the boys ahead of time, make arrangements for a lunch to go with your mom. So that was what they did, and Krishna got up really early, and he blew on his bugle, and the bugle was a very sweet sound, and it woke up the calves, and the cowherd boys, and off they go into the forest. And then we've been hearing like how many of the calves and how many of the cowherd boys there were. We heard like, that's a really big number. We're going to hear it again. So here's where we're beginning. This is okay. Yeah. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur making commentary on Canto 10, Chapter 12, verse number 2. And the cowherd boys are referred to in the verse as Pituka, cowherd boys. And it describes they were holding sticks, horns, flutes, and lunch bags. So here's how many there were. Sahasra Parisankhya means 10,000. How many calves? Krishna had and asankhya number of calves. So here's how that's determined. A prarartha is 1 followed by 17 zeros. That's how many a prarartha is. Or it's 100 trillion. 1 with 17 zeros at the end. 100 trillion, so 100,000 million billion trillion. That's a lot of calves. Then that's 1 prarartha. And 1 prarartha times 1 prarartha times 1 prarartha times 1 prarartha equals asankhya. That's how many calves. Too many to count. You stop counting at that stage. So sankhya means count, and asankhya means that many. So now I'm going to spend a little, I did a little checking. This is not Vishwanath's commentary, but from the description in Dwaraka, I'm just going to read. Shukadeva Goswami informed Maharaj Parikshit that he heard from reliable sources that simply to teach the children of the Yadu dynasty, there were 38,800,000 tutors. If so many teachers were needed, this is Prabhupada from Krishna book, if so many teachers were needed to educate their children, one can simply imagine how vast was the number of family members. As for their military strength, it is said that King Ugrasena had alone 10 quadrillion soldiers as personal bodyguards. That's a big number. I don't even know what 10 quadrillion would look like, how many zeros that is. Billion, trillion, quadrillion. I mentioned this yesterday. Sadaputta, have you heard his name before? Sadaputta? Richard Thompson? No? PhD from Cornell University in mathematics, Prabhupada disciple that was assigned by Prabhupada to make a plan for the planetarium by study of the 5th canto, member of the Bhaktivedanta Institute. So his PhD was mathematics, so I heard this on several occasions. He did the math of how did those 10 quadrillion soldiers fit into Dwarka? And so he did the math of what's the surface area of the earth. Imagine if you paved over all the oceans. And that's, calculate that's the surface area of the earth, because you can have the diameter and so forth. And you calculate what it would take for somebody to stand next to somebody in a crowd. But how much space they would occupy. And it would take more than the planet Earth to fit 10 quadrillion people. And that's just bodyguards, and they all were in Dwarka, which is this island off of in the sea. So how'd they all fit? That's just the bodyguards, or the teachers and the children. Here's some more. Now back to the commentary. One should not argue, however, that such a large number of calves could not possibly fit into the 32 square mile area of Vrindavan. I mean, it wouldn't fit. But one shouldn't argue like that, because the Dham is unlimited by the inconceivable energy of the Lord. Even a small portion of the holy Dham is sufficient to accommodate billions of universes, each measuring 50 million miles in diameter. That's the statement from the Vedas. It's in yojanas, but 50 million miles in diameter And billions of those all fit into Vrindavan. Krishna showed this to Brahma in a later chapter. This is chapter 12. It's in chapter 13. The Brihad Bhagavatamrita says there's no question of impediments, obstacles, or limitations because the Lord, His associates, and His holy Dham have inconceivable power, Achintya Shakti. We discussed it this morning, we discussed it last night. We're doing it again because it's part of understanding Krishna. Is God, really simple, A or B? Is God limited or unlimited? He's unlimited. So if He's unlimited, then He has unlimited potencies or limited potencies. Unlimited potencies. So His unlimited potencies can be expanded or withdrawn according to His will. But the potencies are unlimited. So He is unlimited, the potencies of His name are unlimited, His Dham is unlimited, the potencies of His devotees, by His empowering them, can be unlimited, or He can withdraw it. Like this nice discussion in Canto 1. It's also in Mahabharata. But after Krishna's departure, because it's described in the Bhagavatam, later canto, but in the first canto, Arjuna is coming back to Hastinapur from Dwarka after Krishna's departure. After the Kurukshetra battle was over and everything was done, Krishna went back to Dwarka. Queen Kunti tried to stop him. Grandfather Bhishma's departure, chapter 8, chapter 9. Finally he went back. Yudhisthira pleaded, stay a little longer, stay a little longer. He went back. And after he went back, some time passed and the Pandavas, Yudhisthira was ruling. And after some time passed, Krishna's plan for departure from this world came. There are some other things that happened in between, which we're going to hear a little bit about now, and then a little bit tomorrow morning. So, Shishupal and Dantavarka and some other demons were killed. Jarasandha was killed, and Krishna came to remove from the surface of the earth the asuras. Vinashaya Shuddhuskritam. So after he eliminated the last of the asuras, particularly Shishupal and Dantavarka, Krishna returned to Braja. He spent 2 months. He had promised and he returned. We're going to hear some more this evening. He returned to Braja for 2 months and he gave his association to the devotees there. And then he wound up the pastimes of Braja. They entered into their aprakat form. Their prakat form was taken in Vaikuntha Vimana back to the spiritual world. And Krishna returned to Dwarka and he wound up his pastimes in Dwarka. Arjuna was sent to Dwarka. The Pandavas had this intuitive sense, Krishna's pastimes are finished, so they sent Arjuna. So when Arjuna was sent to Dwarka to see what's up, he came to know before he even got there that the whole of the Yadu dynasty was destroyed by the Prabhas battle. They self-destroyed themselves. Balaram departed and Krishna departed. So Arjuna was left to guard the queens. So while he was guarding the queens, something very strange happened. You know what happened? Some cowherds started harassing the queens. And Arjuna tried to repel them, but he couldn't. So when he comes back to give the bad news to Yudhisthira, Krishna left. One of his, in sobbing tones, he said, I, who defeated so many Maharati warriors in the Kurukshetra battle, was unable to stop cowherd men from harassing the queens. Krishna can give power, Krishna can withdraw power. That's the point. He has inconceivable potencies. He can invest it, he can withdraw it. At his will. You could become, most powerful little boy on the planet if Krishna gave you the power to do that. And if Krishna doesn't, you don't have it. So he has Achintya Shakti, and his Dham has Achintya Shakti, and everything in relation to him is invested with potencies as he so desires. He can expand his Dham and he can withdraw it. He can do anything. Say it negatively. There isn't something that he cannot do because he has unlimited potencies. So now we're going back to the commentary. Krishna's cowherd boyfriends were ornamented by their mothers with necklaces of crystal and gunja seed berries before entering the forest. Once in the forest, they ornamented themselves further with forest fruits and flowers. So now we're going to go to another section that speaks about this chapter, but specifically it's going to speak about the cowherd boys. It's going to speak about fraternal love or friendship, the love that the cowherd boys had for Krishna. And how it begins, this is from Priti Sandarbha of Jiva Goswami. And in the previous section, he was describing parental affection. Specifically, he was describing the meeting in Kurukshetra on the occasion of the solar eclipse, chapter 84. So in solar eclipse time, tradition was people would go to Kurukshetra and observe the solar eclipse in that sacred place. So the residents way over there, the residents of Dwarka came, the residents of Braja went. Krishna's associates had a big Kumbh Mela. They had a big gathering together. And they stayed for some time. And they're getting to know one another. The queens got to meet the gopis and Draupadi, and it was fascinating exchanges. It's in Mahabharata. It's also right in the Bhagavatam. And when it was time for returning, each day Nanda was intending to go back to Braja, but he couldn't go because he didn't want to be separated from Krishna. Finally, Krishna requested him to return. So he returns. So there's this discussion in the previous section about that. So it's about parental affection of Nanda and the others, the other cowherd men for Krishna. After this, Krishna returned, Tushti, to Braja, according to Padma Purana, quoted in Krishna Sandarbha, and according to the Bhagavatam. Here's the quote from the Bhagavatam. Oh, this is Canto 1, Chapter 11. Canto 1, Chapter 11. Krishna has just returned to Dwarka. O lotus-eyed Lord, when you go to Hastinapur or Braja to see your friends, one moment becomes 1 trillion years for us who belong to you and who become like eyes without the sun. There he remained eternally. Krishna remained in Braja eternally in his uppercut pastimes. Thus, Vatsalya Rasa has been explained. Now, Maitri Maya Rasa will be explained. Maitri means friendly relationship. So, I don't know if you're familiar with these terms. There's some terms. Alambana. In Rupa Goswami's teaching in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Nectar Devotion, alambana is a combination of two things. It's the beloved and the abode of love. The object of love, called Vishaya, and the abode of love, that's Ashraya. And rasa is an exchange between the two, the abode of love and the object of love. And those two together, that's alambana. The terminology isn't so important, but the principle is important. The alambana is Krishna, the object of love, of the Maitri, appearing as a friend. The abode of love, or ashraya, are his friends, Krishna's friends, in his pastimes, who have his excellent qualities and jati. You know the meaning, right? Jati. Jati is, they're the same class, or the same caste, or same family. Jati. So they're just like him. The cowherd boys are his same age, just it's very similar to him. In this rasa, though Krishna sometimes has 4 arms, he is perceived in his human form. And he quotes Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna prayed, chapter 11, Bhagavad Gita, after showing the universal form. Oh, Krishna with 1,000 arms, appear with 4 arms. When Krishna showed that form, Arjuna said, chapter 11 again, Bhagavad Gita, having seen your gentle human form, O Janardana, now I am peaceful. I've gained composure. The form of the universe, which produced fear, was not his cherished form. So this is now on the topic of friendly, or the rasa of friendship, sakya rasa. So now it's going to go into some detail. There are different categories of friends, this Maitri. Some are surits and some are sakhas. Surit means they help one another. Those that just, they're like, your brother and sister here, you may help one another. He needs something, she needs something, you help one another with that something. And that's like a brotherly, sisterly exchange, a friendly exchange. That's called suhrit. Suhrit means friendly. The surits, whose characteristics were previously described, helping one another, they include Bhimasen in relation to Krishna. Interestingly, Draupadi and others. Then this other category, the sakhas, like the cowherd boys, they play. Sakhas are Arjuna, Sridham, Vipra, and others. Sridham in Gokula. So Sridham in Gokula, he's Radharani's brother. Radharani has a brother. And his name is Sridham. And they go together, and Sridham and Krishna generally are found to, when they have wrestling competition, those two wrestle and Sridham always wins. And Sridham says, what kind of a big man are you? You always lose. But Krishna enjoys losing to Sridham. Then there's mentioned specifically in his commentary of Sridham Vipra. And he says these are famous in the Bhagavatam. So I'm not familiar with Sridham Vipra, so I did some research. And I'm going to give you 4 different references that speaks of Sridham Vipra. One of them is in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, where Prahlad Maharaj is asked by his father, what's the best thing that you learned? And he describes the 9 processes of bhakti as the best things that I've learned. And one of those 9 processes of bhakti is friendship. So let's see if we can remember the verse. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam. That's 3. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam. Next one. Padasevanam, Arshanam, Bandhanam. Lakshmi serves the lotus feet. Padasevanam. Arshanam, deity worship. Bandhanam, offering prayers. Dasyam Sakyam Atmanivedanam. That's 9. Dasyam, service. Sakyam is friendship. So under friendship, this is in Srila Prabhupada's purport, Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, under friendship. Sridhar Swami mentions Sridham Vipra, who expressed to himself his feelings of obligation. Think, life after life, may I be connected with Krishna in this friendly attitude. So who's that? Doesn't disclose who he is. So then in Nectar of Devotion, under fraternal devotion, which is the same, friendship, it's chapter 15, Prabhupada writes, except for Vrindavan, all the places of Krishna's pastimes are called puras or towns. Examples are Mathura and Hastinapura, the capital of the Kurus, are both puras. Personalities like Arjuna, Bhima, Draupadi, and Sridham Brahmana are counted among Krishna's fraternal devotees in the puras. I mean, I find it's interesting. Draupadi is fraternal. But it's friendship. It's not just a man to a man or a girl to a girl. It's a mood of friendship. Now we're getting closer. Here's the same section from Nectar Devotion or Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu described in Jaiva Dharma, which is a book by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and he writes, same, Krishna's friends are divided into 2 categories, those who reside in the city, Pura, and those in Braja. Arjuna, Bhima, Draupadi, and Sridham Brahmana, parentheses, Sudama, Vipra, are sakhas in the city, amongst whom Arjuna is the best. So he's equating Sridham Brahmana with Sudama Vipra. Now Sudama Vipra we know. They went to school together. Sudama, Vipra. So the same is confirmed by Jiva Goswami in his Sandarbhas, that this Sridham Vipra or Sridham Brahmana is Sudama. And there's one more reference. No, that's it. That's it. Okay. So now there's 2 categories. Surit, and the second one is sakhas, and they just play. And then there's the friends in these 2 categories. Then there's another, the city and the village, or Braja. In the Agamas, Vasudama, Kinkini, and others are mentioned. What are the Agamas? You familiar with the Agamas? If you were to see a chart of what's the Vedas, the Agamas are a section of the Vedas. And it's a section of the Vedas that are important for Vaishnavas because it describes how to do Vaishnava activities, how to perform rituals, how to worship deities, how to observe festivals. It's a how-to section for Vaishnavas. And within that is, for us, and very important, is Narada Pancharatra. Our deity worship standards in ISKCON, and not only in ISKCON, but elsewhere, in other Vaishnav groups, it's the Pancharatras. And if you remember, those that were, maybe the people online will remember, we had some discussion. I would received a question. In Udupi, there's no goddess of fortune next to Udupi Krishna. So why? And for that matter, it then expanded, why sometimes in Sri Vaishnavism, it looks like they have over there a temple for the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi, and, you don't necessarily see the Shakti portion. So I didn't know the answer. The answer that I had heard was prior to Madhavendra Puri and the worship of Gopal with Radha. Anyway, it was understood that the deity Krishna has Lakshmi within. Something like Mahavishnu, Ramadevi is within. The goddess of fortune is always with the Lord. We don't see Mahavishnu with Lakshmi. We see Garbhodakshay Vishnu with Lakshmi. And then Brahma comes, Lakshmi's there. So I made an inquiry, skipping the details, of Sri Vaishnava Pandit gave a very nice answer. On the chest of the Lord in Sri Vaishnavism, there's Sri and Bhu. And because his point was, although they're very small, Murti is Murti. And Shakti of the Lord is Shakti of the Lord. It doesn't have to be the same size as the Lord. And, he explained, according to the Agamas, which Madhvacharya follows and which we in Sri Vaishnavism follow, it also stipulates in the Agamas that the Shakti of the Lord is to have her own temple, mandap. And so we do that. We follow the Agamas and they follow the Agamas. So that's why you see they're not worshipping Lakshmi separately. They're just following the Agamas, and she's to be worshipped along with Narayan, or the forms of the Lord. So that's how I know something about the Agamas. They're authorized Vedic literatures that describe how to do things. So in those Agamas, the reference here, back to the commentary, in the Agamas, some other names are mentioned of Krishna's friends, Vasudama, Kinkini, and others. Then, also mentioned in Vavishyottara, in the wrestling pastimes, Subhadra, Mandalibhadra, Bhadra, Vardhana, Gobhata, and Yakshendra Bhatta are mentioned. They are similar to Krishna. When Krishna would go to the forest, they would have wrestling pastimes, and these names are mentioned. Some of these are mentioned. And he quotes this verse, 10:12:2, Tenaiva sakam prituka. The boys were similar to Krishna. Tenaiva sakam prituka. It is said, Gopai samana guna shila vayo vilasa vaishai. That is, the boys had similar qualities, character, age, actions, and even dress. Then he quotes from chapter 18 of this Canto 10. O king, those who had taken birth as cowherds and had cowherd forms, similar in quality to the two boys, praised Krishna and Balaram, just as dramatic dancers praise a dance. This is explained in the Krishna Sandarbha, so he's not going to elaborate. They have natural knowledge. They said to the Brahmanas is the pastime where, just before the Govardhan Lila, the pastime where Krishna was approached by the cowherd boys, saying, "We're hungry." And Krishna said, "Okay, there's a yajna over there by the side of Govardhan Hill, and you just use my name and Balaram's name and say, you're asking for some food for Krishna and Balaram on my behalf. And go see what happens." So they didn't receive anything, but when they spoke to the Brahmanas, that was the drama, that was the Leela, they said, cowherd boys said to the Brahmanas, "Except during the interval between the initiation of the performance of a sacrifice and the actual sacrifice, O most pure Brahmanas, it is not contaminating for even the initiated to partake of food, at least in sacrifices other than the Sotramani Yajna." So now, there's a rule. Once the sacrifice begins, you're not to stop. And if you stop, it can be a problem, or you have to go back and start from where you began and do it all over again. You can't stop once it starts. It's like Vishwamitra when he was doing the yajna, and Ram and Lakshman were there to protect from the. Once he started, he had to continue. So they're saying that there's a rule. The commentary to this says these little boys, they knew the rules of yajna. They're not brahmanas, but they knew the rules. So when you do the initial mantra, beginning of everything, before the yajna actually begins, during that interval, even you as brahmanas can take meal. So you certainly can give to us. There won't be any contamination, except for one kind of yajna. And that's Sotramani Yajna. Now I had to look this up. And it turns out it's a ceremony where there's liquor being offered. So the boys knew about it. So they're skillful in the arts. This is praised by Krishna. Chapter 18. While the other boys were dancing, O king, Krishna and Balaram would sometimes accompany them with song and instrumental music. And sometimes the two lords would praise the boys, saying, "Very good, very good." There's more detail. 3 types of sakhas. So there's surits and there's the sakhas, and there's 3 types of sakhas. The general sakhas, priya sakhas and priya narma sakhas, according to the excellence of their bhava, and the topmost is Sridham, that's Radharani's brother, and others are the topmost in skillful play with the highest affection, filled with the highest sweetness. And he quotes another verse from this chapter. Some of you may have heard, I'm particularly thinking of the online people, Prabhupada would repeat this phrase over and over, Krita Punya Punja. And it's Sukadev Goswami in an ecstatic mood in this chapter, after describing what the cowherd boys do with Krishna, that they're most exalted. And he says basically, who can say how many pious activities they've undergone to be able to play with the personality of Godhead? The Gyanis, they try this way, the yogis, they try that way. The devotees go the other way, and these boys are just going and playing with Krishna. How elevated are they? Krita, Punya, Punja. There's more to the verse. Dasyam Gatanam Paradaivatena. If you hear Prabhupada speak, you'll hear those phrases again and again. He liked that verse. So here's the translation. Quote, in this way, with an abundance of splendor, caused by Krishna, just like you can get some of Krishna's Achintya Shakti and become very powerful. So the cowherd boys, they became splendorous, caused by Krishna. They played with him, who was pure consciousness, known as Brahman for the Gyanis, who was the Supreme Lord for the devotees with Dasya Bhav, and who was an ordinary human child for those covered by material illusion. Krishna, as the alambana, the stimulation of love, is described. Wearing a peacock feather ornament on his head, yellow karnikara flowers on his ears, a yellow garment as brilliant as gold, a Vaijayanti garland, Krishna exhibited his form as the greatest of dancers as he entered the forest of Vrindavan, beautifying it with the marks of his footprints. He filled the holes of his flute with the nectar of his lips, and the cowherd boys sang his glories. Paragraph. The qualities among that which stimulated ecstatic love for his friends includes Krishna showing friendliness, straightforwardness, gratitude, intelligence, learning, genius, skill, bravery, strength, tolerance, compassion, and red eyes, as well as all good qualities and beauty of age and limbs. For the suhrids, those that want to help Krishna, qualities like straightforwardness are the principal stimulations for ecstatic love. For the sakhas, these are mixed with skills in arts, beauty, etc. In friendship, which is a mixture of both suhrid and sakha, both sets of qualities act as stimulations of ecstatic love, and the combination is mentioned with Arjuna. And this is this Arjuna, when he comes back to Hastinapur, after having found out that Krishna left, he says, or the verse says, stopping with difficulty the tears and wiping his eyes with his hands, extremely pained by the increased longing of love due to separation, remembering the Sakya, Maitri, and Surid relationships with Krishna, he spoke to the king with choked voice, filled with tears. So he's speaking to his brother, Yudhisthira. But he's remembering these different types of relationships. This will be explained later, and it's going to come up shortly. Krishna reveals his qualities as stimulations of ecstatic love among the cowherds. Here's some examples. Quote, chapter 13, when Krishna, the giver of fear to fear itself for the whole universe, saw the cowherd boys were frightened, he said, this is the calves disappeared, and they were like, uh-oh, the calves disappeared, we're supposed to protect the calves. So Krishna saw they were apprehensive. So he said, my dear friends, don't stop eating. I shall bring your calves back to the spot. Then, thereafter, when Krishna was unable to find the calves, he returned to the bank of the river, but there he was also unable to see the cowherd boys. Thus he began to search for both the calves and the boys everywhere in the forest. There's further description of this friendship between Krishna. Maybe I should add, well, it's almost done. Here's Sukadeva Goswami speaking. O king, demigods disguised themselves as members of the cowherd community, and Just as dramatic dancers praise another dancer, they worship Krishna and Balaram, who are also appearing as cowherd boys. So it repeats itself. And further explanation of these different categories of friends. This is that same verse, Krita Punya Punya, translated more completely. In this way, all the cowherd boys used to play with Krishna, who is the source of the Brahman effulgence for the Gyanis, desiring to merge into that effulgence, who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead for devotees who have accepted eternal servitorship, and who, for ordinary persons, is but another ordinary child. The cowherd boys, having accumulated the results of pious activities for many lives, were able to associate in this way with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. How can one explain their great fortune? Another example of Krishna stimulating ecstatic love is the same. We read this. The udipans in this friendship rasa will be considered. Among these udipans are the following transcendental qualities. We read this also. This is repeating. Loving friendship, straightforwardness, gratitude, intelligence, learning, glory, expert skill, heroism, strength, tolerance, mercy, and giving delight to the people. Included also youthful handsomeness, all auspicious bodily features, and other qualities. Lord Krishna's friendly affection for the gopas is seen in these words. When Krishna saw that his friends, the cowherd boys, were frightened, he, the fierce controller, even of fear itself, said to mitigate their fear, "My dear friends, do not stop eating. I shall bring your calves back to this spot by personally going after them myself." And then the last, the meaning of these verses, this is Krishna looking for the cowherd boys and calves is clear. These verses were spoken by Shukadeva Goswami. So what we've just done is gotten some details about what it's like to be a friend of Krishna. Or whether, because specifically here it's cowherd boys in chapter 12, but that's one of the categories of friendship with Krishna. And there's features of that friendship with Krishna. You know, what does Krishna say in Bhagavad Gita about friendship with him? Bhoktaram Jagatapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram Suridam, there's Surid. Suridam Sarvabhutanam Gyatvamam Shantim Rishtati. Prabhupada calls that the peace formula verse, Shanti. Gyatvamam Shantim. Knowing Krishna in those ways you can be peaceful. And one of them is Krishna's your dearmost friend. So, dearmost friend, we had, we're in Detroit, but in Palatine, in the Chicago suburb, Palatine, they just had, they're still having, I think, they have an online Gita camp because pandemic, they can't do it in person. There was a good turnout. There was something between 40 and 50 kids. And I was invited. And the topic that I was asked to speak about was feeling friendship with Krishna. So the age group has different capacity to understand what that means. And, you know, who's a friend? And then ask them what they consider, what does a friend mean to you? Having a friend or being a friend. What does it mean to you? But so it's a nice topic. And their simple explanation is someone you can rely on. They're there for you, and what does that mean to be there for you, or you be there for somebody? So the children exploring the topic of friendship. But Krishna is such a friend. There's different degrees of understanding Krishna as our friend. But one way is he's within our hearts. We turned our attention away from him, but he didn't turn his attention away from us. Prabhupada gives this nice example of a father, and at some point the son may go away. He grows up and goes away. And the son may get involved in his academics and his career and his this and that, and then marriage and his family, but the father never forgets the son. The son may forget the father because of worldliness or other reasons. The father never forgets the son. So Krishna never forgets us. So if he's with us or we're with him in the spiritual realm, and the misuse of free will lands us in this material world, he doesn't leave us, he's in our hearts as super soul. Or say it the other way around. When we return to the spiritual world, is Super Soul still going to be in our heart, or is he going to be in front of us in his Bhagavan future? There's no Super Soul in the spiritual realm. Super Soul is because we turned our back, and he placed himself inside our heart. He's our best friend. And he's making arrangements for all of our necessities. Just like parents are for their children. They're not only parents, they're the best friends of their children because they're making all arrangements for their necessities. The children don't even have to ask. When it gets cold out, here's 3 jackets. And it's meal time, and they don't have to say, I'm hungry. It's like it's already made, and so forth. But of course, that's parental affection, and parental affection includes friendship. Whatever is there in friendship is also there in parental affection plus. Giving protection, giving care. So Krishna is our very best friend. And similarly, as having this discussion with a devotee, the spiritual master is your very best friend. Your very best friend. Because who's the best friend? Or to be someone's friend, from a Vaishnava point of view, is you remind them of Krishna. Because the root of suffering is ignorance. And ignoring Krishna is the root of all ignorance. So to be someone's friend, you remind them of Krishna. Of course, you do it in an appropriate way, based on circumstance and what they're going through and so on, and the relationship itself. But that's being a friend. So we can be a friend to everybody. We don't necessarily have to like somebody's bad behavior, but we can be a friend to everybody by reminding them of Krishna in a way that is appropriate for the time, place, circumstance. And Krishna is our dearmost friend. But so that's seeing him as Super Soul who's guiding our activity. But then there's higher and more and more and more and more and more intimate sense of friendship, and the highest Priyanarma Sakhas. Sridham and these intimate cowherd boys, that they have such friendship that they take the superior position. And he likes it. He liked losing to Sridham. And the one that loses has to carry the winner on his shoulders. And Krishna likes it. Krishna likes it. He liked losing wrestling matches with Sridham. And, Kamsa is another story. One punch and he's finished. He's all powerful, but the nature of loving exchange with Krishna becomes more and more sweet and more intimate as we move. But even in our present stage, to see Krishna as a friend. He's like what these kids were saying. He's someone that's your friend. They're always there for you. They're non-judgmental. You can't get a better friend than Krishna. He's always there to give you good advice, a helping hand, anything that you need at any time, in any circumstance. He's the best friend. So we're getting this picture, now back to the section we just read. This is Jiva Goswami and Rupa Goswami and others describing the nature of the rasa of friendship and the different categories of friendship, and that which helps to stimulate that friendly, loving exchange with Krishna is Krishna's qualities, Krishna's garments, Krishna's smile, Krishna's form, Krishna's words, Krishna's flute. Different stimulations that stimulate that friendship, and then how they conduct themselves. Sometimes they dance. Sometimes Krishna accompanies them. He dances with them. Sometimes he plays music. Sometimes he sings. Sometimes. And they're just enjoying the company of one another. Krita Punya Punja. How many pious activities? How did they become eligible for that service, that relationship? So we're going to go, shortly, we'll go back to the flow of the verses in the chapter, but it's kind of a little break and taking like kind of a closer look at what friendship with Krishna is in different categories of it. So let's see if there's some discussion in the room. And we'll do that a bit to allow people that are online to send in their questions. I probably should have said this at the beginning. Those of you that are host and hostess, you get the microphone first. Okay.
First thing, Maharaj, in the story you said Gopas are troubling queens.
Gopas are
that I don't. Cowherd boys are troubling queens, and Arjuna couldn't able to protect.
The gopis. It was the queens. So after Krishna left, he gave some instruction to Daruka, his chariot driver. Go back to Dwarka and tell those that are remaining in Dwarka to leave immediately, because Dwarka is going to sink. And Arjuna was there, and Arjuna was entrusted to give protection to the queens. And as they were traveling to leave Dwarka to a place of safety, they were attacked by cowherds, and Arjuna couldn't repel them. That's the reference.
But cowherds are the pure devotees of Krishna.
No, these are just cowherd people living somewhere.
Okay.
Not the Brijbasi cowherd boys.
Okay, Maharaj.
Oh, because
Yeah.
they're in Dwarka. That's like, the cowherd boys didn't go over to Dwarka.
Okay, Maharaj.
By that time, they had already entered the Aprakat Lila.
Okay.
This is another set of, okay, now I see the
Sure,
confusion.
Maharaj. I am good. No, Maharaj. And I have another question, Maharaj. So, how we can access the mercy of Krishna devotees? I mean, mercy is all the time there, Maharaj.
Yeah.
Sometimes we are able to access, and sometimes we are not able to access.
That's a matter of heart.
Matter of heart.
Yeah. I mean, the sun is just, the sun is shining. Sometimes there's clouds. Sometimes there's heavy clouds. Sometimes there's no clouds. So when there's clouds, the sun is still shining, but the light and the heat is being blocked by the clouds. Similarly, mercy from Krishna is coming. And there's something in our heart called anarthas, or sins, that block the mercy of Krishna. Now the good news about bhakti is it removes sins, or the actions of sins. But the difficulty is anarthas have power to block the power of the sun, or block the power of bhakti. And therefore we don't experience the mercy that's always there. So then what to do? Anartha nivritti, that's what we do. And how do you do anartha nivritti? You follow the bhajana kriya process properly. And be very patient. And be very enthusiastic. That's Rupa Goswami's teaching, right? Utsahan nischayat daryat. Be very enthusiastic. Same time, be very patient. Because sometimes and sometimes, that's unsteady bhakti. Sometimes and sometimes.
Sometimes being patient is also very painful, Maharaj. So in the process, it's up and down. So.
Well, that's true for all of us. The sine curve is just part of the earlier stages of bhakti. Unsteady, anishtata bhakti. But the idea is kind of like with coronavirus, you flatten the curve.
I have few questions, Maharaj, but if anybody wants.
No, you two have the microphone. You can give to your husband, you can come back to you.
Yeah. Maharaj, in the beginning of the class, right, you mentioned how to get a Vrindavan ticket. What was the response from...
How to get what?
Vrindavan ticket, how to buy a Vrindavan ticket.
Okay.
So what was Prabhupada's response? Or,
No, he didn't respond, he said, you cannot enter Vrindavan by buying a ticket.
Oh, okay.
That, you can go to the place with having a ticket, but you can't enter. You can go to the physical place, but you can't enter the spiritual realm or spiritual dimension of Vrindavan.
Yes, Maharaj.
You need bhakti. And with bhakti you need, even those who have bhakti, they need mercy. Then you can enter.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Maharaj. Yeah. And one more thing, Maharaj, after Krishna left this planet, right? How did Balram, Radharani and others left this planet, Maharaj?
Well, Balaram left before Krishna left.
Oh, before Krishna.
Yeah. You can read about it in the final canto. It's described.
Oh, is it any curse like Krishna Maharaj? Or
say it again?
Is it a curse? I read somewhere that Krishna left this planet because of his having some curse, and that is
well,
how...
who can curse Krishna? But Gandhari issued some curse.
Right.
But who can curse Krishna? Because he's the supreme.
Right.
But he smiled and he accepted, because it was just part of the plan to inspire Gandhari to say what she said. It's described similarly that Kaikeyi said what she said, inspired by Super Soul, by Ram, to say what she said. Banished to the forest for 14 years. That was Super Soul inspired her. I mean, there's many other things to say about why she did what she did, but ultimately it's sanctioned by the Supreme Lord. It was part of his arrangement. So he could do what he did. So Krishna could depart the world in the way that he departed the world. So some people say, and it's true, she gave a curse. But that's not why he left. He's impervious to anything.
Yes, Maharaj, that's right. Yeah.
But he accepted. But it's not just because he accepted. The whole thing is a lila. Okay?
Yes, Maharaj. And one last question, Maharaj.
Sure,
This is
have as many as you like.
Yeah, off the track. But like, I heard, like, some devotees, they say that, like, we should not offer tulsi or pluck tulsi or Dwadasi day. Right? Is that correct, Maharaj?
I've never heard that one, but deity worship is not something I've taken the time to go deeply into, but I can easily find out. And when I find out, he'll let you know.
Sure, Maharaj.
The answer to your question.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Maharaj, in the same
I'm
context.
surprised. And the reason I'm surprised is Krishna doesn't need to not receive anything at any time. So why is that? It doesn't make any sense to me. If there is a rule, I'd like to know why, not just that's the rule.
Maharaj, what I heard is Tulsi Maharani fasts on Ekadasi. So Dwadasi day we should not pluck. Some devotees I heard, Maharaj, so I don't pluck usually on Dwadasi day. I'm not sure.
We offer grains to Krishna 24,
Grains we offer, Maharaj, but Dwadasi day I don't pluck Tulsi Maharani. That's what I don't know.
So me and my wife, like, somewhere she heard and like, she not let me do it.
So, I mean, you could be sneaky and you pluck Tulsi the day before and then you put on the...
Yeah, that I do, Maharaj. I'll pluck on Ekadasi day itself.
The day before?
Yes.
Okay. I'll find out. So it's not just offering, it's plucking.
Yes.
Plucking and offering, yeah.
Offering is okay, but we should not pluck. That's what I
Okay,
heard.
I'll find out. I'll find out.
Okay.
Thanks for that clarification.
I have, in the same context, Maharaj, you said like Kaikeyi and all those super soul, Krishna himself made them talk like that.
Commentators in Sri Sampradayas teach that.
So, if somebody is hurting us, do we need to consider the same way like Krishna is making them do for our purification?
Yes.
All the time, Maharaj?
Not all the time.
So, how to identify that
But it's not
line?
exactly, Krishna is making them do it for your purification. This is Prabhupada's teaching. Don't blame the fruits. Don't blame the instrument of your karma. If I've done some misdeed and I'm walking along the path of life, and here comes the fruit of my past misdeeds. Now I'm a devotee, if I'm a devotee, then that's minimized, but it's a reminder of some misdeed in the past, and it's for my purification. It's being sanctioned by Krishna too. You can read Brahma Samhita, Yastvindra Gopam Atavendra Mahos for karma. Forget the text number. You can look it up?
I can do.
Oh, he's going to give you the text number. And there, Bhaktisiddhanta explains, in the commentary, that for those who aren't devotees, from Indra down to Indra Gopajuram, they get karma, according to their deserve. And for the devotees, Krishna will uproot the very tendency for fruitive activity. It's our special wake-up call. We don't know why it happens. Every fourth day it happens.
How to identify, Maharaj, between the ego or the
Can you speak into the microphone? Because there's people online that don't know what you're saying. Go ahead. Go ahead, speak.
How to identify, Maharaj? Sometimes, most of the time we try to know, okay, Krishna is giving this. But there are some times we really want to step up and say, no, this is not the right.
That's okay. You can do that even if Krishna is giving it. Krishna may want you to, be of service to some other person. It takes intelligence.
Yes.
It takes higher consciousness to know this or that. And, is it this or is it that?
Yes.
But one of the things that we want to avoid doing is just reacting.
Yes, Maharaj.
Be in the mode of service. So if someone's crossed the line, you have many choices. One of them is, one of them that's not is just, you give it back to them, just out of retaliation mood. But you may take a strong position because it's appropriate to take a strong position, but in the mood of service, because it's for their well-being, not just self-preservation
Yes, Maharaj.
in interpersonal relationships.
Yes, Maharaj. One last question,
Yeah.
Maharaj, sorry to say. So, I often hear, Maharaj, gratitude is bhakti. But sometimes we go I go very sentimental or attached due to lack of knowledge, Maharaj. So, how to handle that situation? Like recently, Bhakti Charu
What kind of situation?
recently Bhakti Charu Maharaj left this planet. So 2 days I was like crying, and then I forgot within a week or 2 weeks, Maharaj. So sometimes we are becoming so sentimental.
Can you speak
crying.
into the microphone?
Yes, Maharaj. So I don't know whether it is attachment or sentimental, because Maharaj is directly went back to Krishna. So unnecessarily crying for 2-3 days, and then now I totally forgot about. So how to develop that gratitude, continuously having it, Maharaj?
How to have continuous gratitude is your
Yes,
question.
yes.
Well, you have to become pure to have continuous anything. And purity has its price. And that's, your sincere application, sincere and enthusiastic application to the bhakti process, and lots of mercy, and then you can become pure. So be eager for mercy and be eager to extend yourself in authorized ways to Krishna's shelter. And when purity is there, then the gratitude will be steady. Everything will be steady. There'll be variety, but it'll be steady. Hey, he's got a...
54.
Huh?
54. That is the
Okay. Brahma Samhita text 54.
Does Krishna or any avatar come after every 8.6 billion years?
I didn't get it. Did Krishna do what?
Does
Did-
Krishna's avatar come after 8.6 billion years?
Every
How often Krishna comes? Krishna takes the
Krishna comes in Vrindavan only once in the day of Brahma.
No, but from there to
But there's 999 other yuga cycles, and Krishna comes, but he doesn't go to Vrindavan. He stays in Mathura and Dwarka, but he doesn't go to Vrindavan.
Yeah, but does Krishna come to Earth after 8?
No, Krishna comes to earth. We'll do it again. Krishna enters Vrindavan only once in the day of Brahma. But Krishna, on the other 999 cycles of the yugas, in Dwarpa Yuga, he comes. Krishna comes on earth. But he stays in Mathura and goes to Dwarka and other places. Those are his principal places. Do you follow what I just said? Does that answer your question? Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. Is there something online? Yes?
I had a question in continuation to that.
Okay.
So we hear Lord Ram comes every 3 kalpas. So
Say it again.
Lord Ram, he comes every 3 kalpas.
Yeah, this is the first I've heard this.
Okay. So he comes every kalpa? Or?
I don't know.
So same with Lord Krishna then?
I don't know.
So go off to the online questions.
Okay.
Sure. From Satish Bhatnagar, I heard that the cowherd boys who harassed the queens were actually Krishna himself. Why was Arjuna not able to recognize his beloved Lord in another form?
What he has heard sounds something like, but it's not exactly what Krishna, what Rupa Goswami teaches in Lalita Madhava. So that's like Krishna Consciousness 401, and I don't feel qualified to answer that question. No, what Arjuna can do and not do is depending upon what Krishna invests him the power. He understood when Krishna, I was able to stop so many generals on the Kurukshetra battle, but when Krishna withdrew that power, he couldn't even protect the queens from cowherd boys. So Krishna invests power, Krishna withdraws power. That's the important message, if I've understood his question correctly. Why he wasn't able? Because Krishna withdrew the power.
One more question from Sancharita Simataji. There are quite a few pastimes where Krishna teases the gopis by feigning illnesses or pain. Are there any similar pastimes with his cowherd boyfriends?
Where he does what?
He acts as if he's ill or in pain.
Oh. Well, yeah. He's in the mouth of Bakasura, and he's in the coils of the Kaliya serpent.
One more question, Maharaj. Is it, from again Mataji, Sancharita Mataji, is it fair to say that everything we experience here has its original form or function in the spiritual world?
Yes.
So whatever we consider to be products of imagination actually exists somewhere in Krishna's creation?
Well, not exactly, but it's, the perverted, distorted reflection, sometimes unrecognizable, but everything has its origin or root in Krishna.
There's one more question.
Okay.
From Anjum Biswas, you mentioned that in order to become pure, we need sincere effort from our side and mercy from Krishna. I want to understand receiving mercy of Krishna.
Open your heart.
So again, this continuation which he has done is in one sense, we are receiving mercy of Krishna every moment.
Yes.
Even to be alive, we need Krishna's mercy.
Yeah.
So does it mean that Krishna's mercy is always there for us to become pure?
Yes. But sometimes we have a receiver off.
So one question I had, Maharaj. So we were talking earlier in the lecture about Ugrasena and his bodyguards and all that.
Yeah.
So is this Ugrasena is also in the spiritual world as well?
That reference is Ugrasena as the king in Dwarka. So you're wanting to know that Ugrasena, who's the king in Dwarka, is he in the spiritual world also? That's your question?
Yes, Maharaj.
I don't know of any specific scriptural reference that says so. But it would make sense that he is. These are Krishna's eternal associates. So eternal associate means he's in the spiritual world. But an explicit statement that says, oh yeah, and Ugrasena is there too. I don't know of any, by inference, yes.
Yes, the understanding so far I had was Krishna is the king in the spiritual world again.
Well, yes,
Ugrasena.
Krishna's not the king in Dwarka. Ugrasena is the king.
Right.
He's in the royal family, but Krishna's not the king. And the king is the king. So, is it unclear or clear?
But I'm trying to understand, in the spiritual world,
There's a king. Yeah,
so same things.
yeah.
there.
As above, so below. Or as below, so above. Vasudeva and Devaki are there. Nanda and Jasoda are there. There's a king.
Maharaj, one more question. This is related to Lord Brahma. And
Speak into the microphone.
yes, Maharaj. This is related to Lord Brahma. We discussed about the objections that some Madhvas have regarding Brahma Vimohan Leela, right? We said they don't accept these chapters.
Boy, everyone's like up in the air about this one. He had a similar, refresh on that topic again.
Okay.
You were there, right?
Yes, Maharaj.
Okay, so now you have something different, or same thing again.
I don't know.
Go ahead. I'm interrupting.
So I was thinking, there's an instance where Lord Brahma gets distracted by his daughter, right?
Yeah,
So do they object to that, or do they don't object to that?
I don't know if they object to that or not.
Okay.
I do know that they object to this.
All right, that's all.
Maharaj, I have a question.
Okay.
Is there a connection between karma and bhakti? Does karma influence our path in bhakti?
Why would you ask that question? Let's say it differently. Bhakti dissolves karma. So you're asking, does karma have some play in bhakti? No. Guna, yes. Tendency, yes. But not karma.
It's just a side question that I have, but let's say, can our past life karma be an impediment to bhakti?
Well, not exactly. There's tendency. Supposing somebody, I don't know, they're a thief, and in their last life. So now in this life there may be some tendency. Bhakti destroys the karma, but there may be some residual tendency. And residual tendency may come out by some prompt, getting near someone who's a thief, or something like that, or a circumstance, it may come out. That's not karma, it's residual tendency. Bhagavad Gita 10:11 answers your question. Jnana dipena bhasvata, aham ajnana jam tamaha. Krishna removes that tendency personally. Okay? Yeah.
Maharaj, you are saying about we are having mercy and sometimes having our receivers off. So is it appropriate to pray? Because what happens is when receivers are on, I feel I move forward. When receivers are up, again going back at the same spot, it's just like I'm like in a pendulum going here and there. So what I was just thinking is like when I even today when I was chanting, I was thinking, I don't know, I have a mercy, but it's not that I'm not able to have, I have a block towards that. So is it a right intention when I pray that?
Is it that you what?
Is it the right intention when I do
Intention?
intention when I pray, or is there something
Well,
like?
I'm not sure exactly. There has to be sustained effort. The sun is shining. And if I'm just, hide under a rock, the sun is still shining. So I have to go out in the sun to get, the rays of the sun. Or at least, out from under the rock.
So even I should have that thing that I need to go under sun.
Yes,
So I have
yes,
I to have that
yes.
thing. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
And that will come, now back to her question about purity. When purity is there, then there's an attachment, asakti, maya sakta manak partha. You're attached. So you don't have to remind yourself to go to, to the sun. You to go to Krishna. You're attached. But now it's not. So there's intermittent. The sine curve. Sometimes not. That's because the heart is not yet purified, or consciousness is not yet purified. There's still attraction to old stuff, the temporary, and this and that, and being the enjoyer of this and that, and we're not purified yet. So it's unsteady. It's intermittent. So what to do? You continue faithfully in the practice that brings the purity, and call for mercy. Okay?
Yes, thank you.
Maharaj, one more online question from Lingaraju P. Says, Maharaj, in Srimad Bhagavatam 3:2-8, Uddhava says to Vidura that this universe with all its planets is most unfortunate.
Is most unfortunate.
Unfortunate. And even more unfortunate are the members of the Yadu dynasty, because they could not identify Lord Hari as the personality of Godhead, any more than the fish could identify the moon. So can you please explain why does he say this? Is this because they killed each other?
No. Uddhava is a spontaneous, ecstatic bhakta. And he it's not just that verse. There's many verses where he says some very puzzling things. And the answer to the puzzling things, including this one, is his ecstatic feelings for Krishna. And he has ecstatic feelings for Krishna, recognizing his divinity. The resident of Vrindavan don't recognize his divinity, and he sees they're above him. But he's the topmost of those outside of Braja, and he feels those that don't recognize, they have the opportunity to associate with Krishna, and they don't know who he is. How unfortunate. It's an ecstatic expression. He values being with Krishna, knowing Krishna is Krishna. And if they don't have that, how unfortunate.
So, couple more questions, Maharaj. Are all the 5 primary rasas found only in Goloka, or they all are also present among devotees in Vaikuntha planets? This is from Rupa Vyasdas.
I've had discussions with learned Vaishnavas that has both answers. One of the discussions I had with Gopi Pranadhana Prabhu, and the rasas are there, but they're weak. And then in other places, it doesn't say the same thing. Other scholarly devotees don't say the same thing. But I'm comfortable with have greatest regard for Gopi. We had like an extended discussion on this topic over some days. So he may hear some arguments that say over on that side, but the rasas are there. I mean, where's the parental rasa, for example? In Vaikuntha, where's Vatsalya rasa towards Narayan? Doesn't exist. So that's the argument that says no. There's conjugal rasa, the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi. And where's the Sakya rasa? In Vaikuntha. So that's where the other discussion goes. So
this question is from Raja Ramchandran. I think this is Radha Vallabh Das.
You're mumbling.
This question is from Raja Ramchandran.
Okay.
So he says, in today's class, the Lord as Super Soul is our constant companion.
Yes.
And friend, providing guidance, very understanding. Intimate, very understanding, intimate is very inspiring. So as practitioners, our primary relationship is servitorship. And if we identify the Lord as friend as well, the door opens for more direct prayers via writing to the Lordships without being worried about offenses.
Right.
Okay. So that was his question.
Okay.
Confirmation.
It's a different kind of friendship than the cowherd boys' friendship. Okay. Looks like we're... Anything else from you? You're good. Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki? Jai.